This report emphasized the importance of the rule of law institutions being gender responsive, including by addressing gender-based violence and ensuring women's meaningful participation in the justice system. Each of our speakers today will address aspects of women's involvement in various legal institutions that help to maintain the rule of law, as well as address continuing impediments to the further achievement of women in these areas. Our first speaker today will be Carmen Boulet. Carmen serves as the treasurer of the board of directors of the Madrid Notarial Association. She is a delegate of the Spanish General Council of Notaries for Economic Affairs and a patron of the Notarial Foundation and head of the Notarial Commission for Women and Society. Carmen will be speaking about the concept of the rule of law in relation to women and women's contributions to its creation and maintenance. Next, Patricia Refo, who has served as the president of the American Bar Association in 20 and 21 and is currently an of counsel to the law firm of Snell and Wilmer in Phoenix, Arizona. Her practice is concentrated in complex commercial litigation and internal investigation. Prior to being elected to be president of the American Bar Association, Trish served as chair of the ABA House of Delegates and chair of the ABA section of litigation. From 2000 to 2006, she was appointed by Chief Justice William Rehnquist to be on the Advisory Committee on the Federal Rules of Evidence. Patricia will be speaking about the progress made and challenges that continue to face women lawyers in the United States. Next, you will hear from Esohe Ikponmwen, who is a retired Chief Justice of Edo State, Nigeria. She served as the prosecuting counsel in the Office of the State Attorney General from 1979 until 1992, and at that point she was appointed Chief Magistrate and served as the acting chairman of State Magistrates Association before her elevation to the High Court bench in 1999. Prior to her appointment as Chief Justice in 2017, she served as the state anti-corruption judge from 2002 to 2017. Esohe will speak about the ways women contribute to the rule of law, as well as their multiple roles in contributing to society. She will also discuss the need to remove challenges and impediments currently faced by women. We will then hear from Aida Bushati, who is a legal expert and an academic affiliated with the School of Magistrates of Albania, specializing in EU law, international law, and human rights. Aida has built a career that bridges academia and legal practice, providing expert legal support to Albanian institutions in the areas of rule of law and judicial cooperation. She is currently involved in a regional project on women's access to justice in collaboration with the schools of magistrates across the region. Aida will speak about the current state of women's representation in the Albanian justice system, focusing on the legal framework and the gap between gender, equality policies, and the absence of targeted strategies to empower women. Lastly, we will hear from Adea Pirdeni. She is the Minister of State for Anti-Corruption in Albania and served 3 years as the Deputy Minister of Justice. Prior to that, she taught at the law school as an academic for 14 years. She will be speaking about the women's role in justice reform and political participation. So thank you, panelists, and why don't we get started? Carmen.
Muchas gracias. Yo, aunque puedo hablar en inglés, pero creo que dado el país en el que estamos, lo mínimo yo que puedo es hablar en español. Entonces, muchísimas gracias, lo primero, a todos por asistir, y dado que tenemos el tiempo bastante justo, pues paso ya a empezar con mis ideas. Estamos aquí, aunque la mesa se llama la contribución de la mujer al mantenimiento del Estado de Derecho. Sin embargo, yo creo que no es posible hablar de este tema sin hablar también de la contribución de la mujer a la creación del Estado de Derecho. Y es imprescindible hablar de ambos a la vez, porque como bien ha dicho doña Hilarie al inicio, según los datos de la ONU del año 2022, hay aún 178 países en el mundo que tienen leyes que son discriminatorias para las mujeres. Esto supone que son un mínimo de 2.400 millones de personas que no tienen los mismos derechos que los varones. Dando unas pequeñas pinceladas sobre lo que es el Estado de Derecho, como saben, es aquel en el que los poderes públicos actúan siempre dentro de los límites fijados por la ley, siempre también de conformidad con los valores de la democracia y los derechos fundamentales, y muy importante, bajo el control de órganos jurisdiccionales imparciales e independientes. Sus pilares básicos son, por un lado, la legalidad. Es decir, tiene que haber un procedimiento legislativo transparente, democrático y plural. La seguridad jurídica, tanto ex ante, al que yo pertenezco como notario de Madrid, al sistema de seguridad jurídica preventiva, que además es el más utilizado en los países, digamos, de sistema jurídico latino, y post, es decir, los judiciales. La prohibición del ejercicio arbitrario del Poder Ejecutivo, la tutela judicial efectiva, a la que antes me refería, la separación de poderes, y sobre todo la igualdad ante la ley. Es quizá en este último aspecto en donde la mujer es más olvidada. Durante siglos nuestras voces, es decir, las de las mujeres, han sido ignoradas, silenciadas y nuestra contribución subestimada. A lo largo de la historia, las mujeres han sido y somos protagonistas en esta lucha, como bien ha dicho en la introducción, por la igualdad y la protección de los derechos humanos. Muchas mujeres, con su liderazgo y valentía, han impulsado los cambios significativos en las leyes y en la forma en que se administra la justicia para poder llegar todos a esta igualdad. Nuestra participación activa en cargos públicos es necesaria e importante. Hay que reconocer también el papel transformador de las mujeres, desde el liderazgo político, también en la innovación técnica y científica. Y no solamente somos las beneficiarias del Estado de Derecho, sino que tenemos que contribuir ahora. Y debemos reconocer este papel transformador que también se ha reconocido. Pero yo quiero dejar aquí claro que la responsabilidad en el mantenimiento o en la creación para poder llegar al Estado de Derecho de las mujeres no solamente es nuestra, también tiene que implicar a los hombres. Es decir, no por mucho que nosotras peleemos se va a conseguir. También es necesario que los hombres estén implicados en ello. En España hemos pasado una época con mucha implicación, tanto de hombres como de mujeres. Tenemos un Estado de Derecho bien consolidado, pero a pesar de ello seguimos estando infrarrepresentadas e infravaloradas en los hechos, no tanto en el derecho. Y sobre todo estamos viendo con preocupación que en las generaciones más jóvenes, y quizá por la influencia de las ahora mencionadas las tablets y el acceso a Internet, se está produciendo una reversión en cómo se está percibiendo la mujer por aquellos varones jóvenes. Es necesario e importante que la educación sea un pilar fundamental, porque no solamente se puede conseguir mediante la imposición de leyes, es necesario que todos tengamos una responsabilidad en ello. En España las mujeres representan el 71,9% de los docentes en las instituciones o enseñanzas no universitarias. En México, el 70%. Y en los países de la OCDE, más de 2/3. En Estonia, Letonia y Lituania, más del 80%. Por eso es necesario que la comunidad educativa también esté implicada en ello. Aún queda mucho por hacer. Las mujeres seguimos enfrentándonos a barreras legales, sociales y culturales. Y como antes bien han manifestado, uno de los grandes problemas es la violencia de género. Estamos ahora en Europa y sobre todo en España especialmente poniendo el foco no en la violencia de género normal, física, sino sobre todo en la violencia económica. Hay muchas actitudes en las parejas o en el trabajo que es una violencia de género efectiva y que está impidiendo que la mujer se desarrolle. Yo que en muchos casos he estado estudiando este tema, pues hay situaciones de pareja o incluso en el trabajo que, por ejemplo, él señor o el marido, el novio, pues le quita el despertador a la mujer para que no pueda acceder al trabajo, se presenta en el trabajo y monta follones o espectáculos para que la mujer intentar que sea despedida. También hay en los convenios de separación y divorcio, en los que nosotros en España los notarios también intervenimos, es muy importante que sea cubierta las necesidades de la mujer y de la familia, que es quien normalmente se ocupa de los hijos. Si no, la dependencia económica del varón hace que persista el abuso y, por lo tanto, la imposibilidad de la mujer de tener un acceso a su situación como pleno sujeto de derecho. Hay muchísimos avances que durante la historia han sido imprescindibles para poder llegar a que la mujer sea valorada y que pueda ejercer sus derechos. Pero además, no solamente, como he dicho antes, en el ámbito jurídico, sino cuántas mujeres conocemos, por lo menos en España hay muchas, que han tenido que utilizar durante siglos el nombre masculino para que su labor sea reconocida, y cuántas otras, por ejemplo en los premios Nobel, que siempre han tenido un sesgo totalmente masculino y en contra discriminatorio para las mujeres, se le ha dado el premio Nobel al jefe de la tesis o al marido de la científica y no se ha reconocido la labor de la mujer. Voy a mencionar algunas que creo que son conocidas por todos y que han sido fundamentales para este desarrollo, que, como digo, no solamente se basa en la cuestión de leyes que traten y que den los mismos derechos a hombres o mujeres, sino que es necesario que la práctica llegue a todos los países y a todos los rincones. También ocurre una cosa, y es que yo lo he visto a lo largo de mi carrera y sigo viéndolo, y es que las mujeres somos tan válidas como los hombres, pero no somos hombres. Hay muchas circunstancias que son distintas. Un buen amigo, profesor de universidad, siempre me decía una cuestión de las mujeres, y es que es curioso que cuando llegaba un examen, normalmente los varones creían que iban sobrados de nota y que iban a salir todo fenomenal. Y en cambio a las mujeres se les preguntaba antes del examen y todas pues tenían ciertas dudas de si iban a ser realmente sus resultados los esperados. Y una vez hecho el examen, normalmente aquellas que dudaban sobre cómo iban a ser los resultados eran muchísimo mejores, y en cambio el que creía que iba sobrado pues a veces era solamente un 5 raspado. Es decir, el ego o la valoración que nosotras mismas hacemos de nosotras muchas veces es inferior a la autoestima que se tienen los hombres. Entonces tenemos también que convencernos y convencer a toda la sociedad que nosotras podemos y que debemos estar ahí. Si no, no hay Estado de Derecho, ni de creación, ni de mantenimiento, ni de nada. Y como decía, voy a hacer referencia a algunas a nivel internacional de mujeres que han marcado y que han contribuido la evolución a un Estado de Derecho pleno, es decir, incluyendo a las mujeres. Por ejemplo, de lo que decía antes, de personas, mujeres que han tenido que utilizar nombres de varón para poder vender su obra, pues Jane Austen. En España, Fernán Caballero, que se llamaba así como hombre, pero era en realidad Cecilia. También Marianne Evans, que era George Eliot. Las hermanas Bronte, que también tuvieron que hacerse nombrar como hombre. Y en cuanto a los premios que he dicho antes del Nobel, por ejemplo, hay un caso muy conocido que es Marie Curie. Se dio a los dos cuando realmente la figura era ella, pero es que hay otros. Nettie Stevens fue la genetista que ya en el siglo XIX descubrió los cromosomas X e Y, y el éxito se lo dieron el premio a un compañero, a B. Wilson. Otra más, Rosalind Franklin, que descubrió el ADN junto con dos compañeros. A ellos dos se lo dieron el Nobel, a ella no. Lisa Meitner fue madre de la fisión nuclear, pero el Nobel se lo dieron a su compañero de laboratorio, a Otto Hahn. Isabella Helen Luxky, también genetista, y determinó la estructura tridimensional de las moléculas de cristalografía de los rayos X, es decir, fundamental para ello. Y el premio Nobel de Química se lo dieron a su esposo, no a ella. Jocelyn Bell Barnell descubrió los pulsares. Sin embargo, el premio Nobel se lo dieron al supervisor de su tesis y a otro compañero. Y tantas otras, me dejo muchas porque son infinitas. Ching Sing Wu, que fue la Marie Curie china. Margaret V. Rossiter. Entonces, fue necesario muchísimos años para que fueran reconocidas. Entonces, necesitamos que todos los países lo reconozcan. Hay en muchos casos no solamente leyes que lo impiden, sino también religiones que no lo permiten. Es necesario, aunque sea duro, superarlas y poder todos vivir en este compromiso activo con la justicia y la equidad. El empoderamiento de la mujer, como antes se ha dicho, enriquece a nuestras comunidades y a toda la sociedad. Cuando nosotros conseguimos la igualdad de oportunidades, todos vamos a ganar. La diversidad de perspectivas y experiencias que aportamos es invaluable para el desarrollo social y económico. Hoy tenemos todos que unirnos y conseguir que esto sea realidad en todas las partes del mundo, en todos los rincones. El papel de la mujer en la construcción y el mantenimiento del Estado de Derecho es esencial, como el del hombre, y juntos tenemos que conseguirlo. Muchas gracias.
Gracias, Carmen. Trish.
Well, is this on? Yes. I am delighted to be here, and I want to start by thanking all of the men in the room. Because, seriously, because by being here, you acknowledge that the achievement of women with respect to the rule of law is also the achievement for men. It is the achievement for humans together. So thank you especially for joining with us today. I want to talk a little bit about where we've come for women lawyers in the United States and how much we have left to do. As a change agent, I really believe that if we can't be clear about the progress that's been made, we can't see clearly what remains to be done. So it's okay to celebrate some of the good things that have happened, still knowing that there is more work ahead. When I went to law school, my first year of law school was 1980, which to some of you is a very, very long time ago, but to me doesn't seem that long ago. At the time, there had never been a woman attorney general in the United States. There had never been a woman president of the American Bar Association. There had never been a woman on the United States Supreme Court. That was how I started my law school career. I cannot, and oh, by the way, on the faculty of my law school, which was a very large law school, there were 2 women. One had tenure, the other did not. My point is to say, during my legal career, a great deal of change has come and a great deal of progress has been made, starting in the United States the year after I began law school, when Sandra Day O'Connor was nominated to serve on the United States Supreme Court. I cannot adequately describe to you how that changed the world for every woman lawyer, I would argue for every woman, in the United States and around the globe. It was extraordinary. Who knew that a woman could be on the United States Supreme Court? And now we have 4. Shortly thereafter, in 1995, we finally elected the first woman president of the American Bar Association, Roberta Cooper Ramo. And that, again, changed the world for women. And by the way, the American Bar Association has always been played a leading role in advancing the careers and opportunities for women lawyers and women judges. Hilarie was the 7th woman president of the American Bar Association. I was the 10th woman president of the American Bar Association, and one of our joint goals was to make sure that whoever the 11th woman was going to be, that she was just going to be the president of the American Bar Association, and that she would not have a number assigned to her, and she did not. So we succeeded in that regard. we got to a point in the United States where the majority of our law students were women in 2016. We got to the point where the majority of lawyers in the federal government were women in the year 2020. Now, since so many of them have been fired, I don't know what today looks like, but at least as of 2020, most or more of the women federal lawyers were women than men. The majority of associates in America's law firms became women in 2023. And we either already are or will soon be in a place where the majority of our law professors are women. You know, the numbers lag a little bit, but we may come close to being there. And it is estimated by the Commission on Women in the American Bar Association that women will become the majority of the legal profession in the United States in the next 2 decades. Now, I may not still be around to see that, but many of you will, and certainly a lot of young women in the U.S. will, and that's going to be an exciting moment. So, enormous progress. But we still have work to do. Where do we have work to do? Well, for example, only about 28% of partners in the United States' law firms are women. And if you look at equity partners, which of course is where the power is in America's law firms, the number is smaller and in the low 20-ish%. Only 12% of the managing partners in the law firms of the United States are women. Again, more than there used to be, but not enough. It's extremely slow progress in all of those areas, in raising the number of women partners, raising the number of women equity partners, and raising the number of women managing partners. When Hilarie was ABA president, she spearheaded, among other things, a very important study called Walking Out the Door, which looked at the question of why do women who are doing well in law firms choose to leave, and at what point in their careers do they choose to leave the law firms in the United States. And what that study said, I mean, there's all sorts of detail, but in a nutshell, the pipeline for women leaks at every single stage of a woman's career. It leaks in the early years, it leaks in the middle years, and it leaks in the more senior years. So we still have a great deal of work to do to make our law firm settings more hospitable to our women colleagues. And I look forward to being part of that change as we move forward. Thank you, Hilarie.
Yes, thank you for this opportunity. I'm glad to be here. Looking at the topic, the contribution of women in maintaining the rule of law. I want to start with the words of the Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, now late, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I think she said something like, women belong in all places where decisions are being made. It shouldn't be that the woman is the exception. Now, the rule of law, we all know what it is. Human rights, the constitutional provisions being adhered to, and all of that. These decisions emanating from that, from these rules and the constitutional provisions, most times are made in the absence of women, especially from where I come. Most of the houses of assembly, Most of the lawmakers are males. So women, who are the mothers, who are the sisters, who are the aunties? In fact, we are co-creators with our Father in heaven, yet most times we are sidelined. We have little or no role to play. But there is hope. Women are coming up. I'd like to go back to even when creation was made by our Father in heaven. Eve and Adam were told not to touch a particular tree, a fruit from a particular tree, but they could eat from everywhere. With due respect to our Father in heaven, they were not consulted, but they were just instructed. Well, what did Eve do? When the serpent came to tell her, you know that fruit, if you eat of it, you'll be wise, you will know a lot of things. What did she do? She ate of the fruit. She gave to her husband. Some may say this is a negative, view. But I think that's the starting point. Women must be bold. They must take steps. If she had not done that, maybe we would not be here today. So another example I want to use is that of the first female vice president of the United States of America, Kamala Harris. I respect her. Recently she said, fear may be contagious, but courage is also contagious. I heard her. And I think the bane of most women is fear. We fear to take steps to correct things that are going wrong. And this is contagious. Those fears are instilled in children and all of that. Although now there's a great liberation in the air because of education. And so we are advocating for more women to be educated, to know their rights, and to speak up. I belong to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I train women. And what I tell them, part of the declaration in the church is, stand for truth and righteousness. As far as I'm concerned, that's the standpoint of the rule of law. If we must maintain it, we must stand for truth and righteousness. And it begins also from the home. What are we as women, as mothers, teaching our children, who are some of the men sitting here? I remember when I left the law school, and my husband had a visitor. He came in and said, oh, my wife just graduated from the law school. He said, Eddie, oh, you are finished. You mean you were married to a lawyer? She will just finish you. We've done 50 years. I'm proud to say, with my husband, I've done 50 years in marriage with him. So there are these inbuilt fears that make women not, do the best, not to come out and shine, not to stand for their right and fight for their rights. I also would like to take your minds to a story in the Bible. It's as easy as that, and it's as simple as that. There are many examples going on where Pilate, when he was to, give judgment and condemn Jesus Christ to death, his wife, she was not named in the Bible, but later from other readings we got to know her name to be Claudia. She was made a saint by the Catholic Church. She warned him. That is the role of a woman. in maintaining the rule of law. You've not given this man a fair hearing. This is an innocent man. So women must speak out. We have a voice. And we must, little things. There was some time I chaired an occasion in a situation like this at the Commonwealth Judicial Education Institute on the human right to water. It was strange to me that I didn't know it came under human rights, what have you. And I used the example of Tobago, where there is water everywhere, but you find, these big containers, they say because they pump water at given times, so they store water. So there's water everywhere, but not good enough to drink. Their water is mostly salty. In other African countries or other climes, you find women struggling to get water, basic things like that, traveling on foot to, fetch water with their children. They are deprived of basic things, whereas these things do not cost so much to provide if only they can, stand up, fight for their rights to get some of these things done. So I know the topic is really very wide and interesting. Women, as far as I know, the symbol of justice is that of a woman, the blindfolded woman. And so we must see our role. Even from time immemorial, it has been noted that the role of women is for fairness, to maintain the rule of law, as it were. Otherwise, why use the symbol of a woman as the statue of a woman as a symbol of justice? So this goes to show that we play an important and, a vital role in maintaining the rule of law, ensuring that there's rule of law in our lands. I think at this point I may have to stop. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to be part of this panel. I am deeply honored to share this panel with very distinguished women and professionals, most importantly. I would like to start by saying that it is very important to include such a topic in this conference, and that it's also highly important that we have a very diverse group of not only panelists, but also audience. That is very much, I would like to echo what you said, Trish, that it's very important that we have a very wide range of not only women and men in the panel, but also youngsters, young generations, who would also not only see as a source of inspirations what had happened so far, but would also are there to take also responsibility on bringing these achievements forward. I'm here to share just a few, I would say significant, but also very humble points of pride of what Albania has done so far in two parallel fields. First of all, in the area of advancing the rule of law by undertaking groundbreaking justice reforms, this has been 10 years ago. A justice reform which has reshaped the entire judiciary in Albania and has started to reinstate the trust in the system. But in the same time, in this last decade, we have done significant strides to institutionalize women's role in the judiciary, but also in the political sphere. And we do believe that these two branches of reforms, paths or reforms, are intertwined with each other. They have to be intertwined with each other because change does not come despite of women, but because of women as well. And we do believe that the rule of law advancements has in its own DNA women as not only participants, but key contributors to the reforms. I would just like to bring a few numbers. Albania ranks as 24th globally out of 146 countries in the global, what we call Gender Equality Index as of 2025. And we take also great pride that we have a higher public participation and political participation of women, which is above the European average. As of the last 6 or 7 years, more than 50% of the members of the government are women. We have a deputy prime minister who is a woman, a speaker of the parliament who is a woman, an ombudsperson who's a woman as well. But all these positions are very much related to when it comes to rule of law reforms, because it starts with the government, but also with the parliament and key legal institutions as ombudsperson to protect fundamental rights of women as well. So we do believe that we start with a good footing, but we also have to do quite some more, especially when it comes to women representation in the parliament, especially in our case, what we did is that we introduced quotas, which means that 1 out of 3 candidates in the list has to be women, which means that quotas in the last 20 years in Albania has brought from a parliament where we had only 4% of women represented now to 34% of women represented. We still do believe that 34% is not enough representative, but as Trish was saying, just my apologies for quoting you twice, but it's very important to say that we have to take stock of what has been done so far in order also to be cognizant of what we have to do in the future, as of now and in the future. It is also very important to see that locally, at the local level, 44% of the seats of the municipal councils are being taken by women. And we do believe that women at the municipal councils are key to shape local politics. And local politics is sometimes even more important when it comes to bringing change at the communities. Last but not least, I would like to mention here that in the framework of the justice reform in Albania, what we did is that we introduced what we call a vetting system. The vetting system has at its own very core the review and the scanning of the wealth of the judges, their integrity and their proficiency. And what has happened as a result of the vetting process, 37% of men has passed this so-called exam, and 57 of women did, which means that the number of women passing this sort of scanning was almost double. What does this say about women? From my perspective, at least, as the minister on bringing forward policies on anti-corruption, it has been now somehow verified through various researches, academic papers, saying that women are less prone to corruption because they tend to be more risk-averse. They tend to look at the repercussions and implications of their actions much more through the ethical and moral lens. But this does not mean that we have to take this as for granted. We know that this is very much context-based as well, and that we have to take into account the fact that these findings can also be part of a broader discussion on a women's role to bring forward rule of law and fight corruption at its very core. So we do believe that we are at a juncture of time where a lot has been done. In the case of Albania, we take quite some pride of the recognition of the women's role in bringing forward justice reforms, but we still do believe that we are not satisfied with just women being exceptions in this process, but women being those who shape these policies, those who implement these policies, and those who are there to also review such policies if they're not good enough to achieve the goals that we want to achieve. So I think this kind of discussion goes very much in that direction, and I would just like to highlight here that since Albania will be hosting the World Law Congress in 2027, I truly do hope that when we all gather together in Tirana with all of you, we could discuss and we could bring to another level this sort of understanding of women's role and their participation in the rule of law agenda. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you to all of you, and it's a great honor also for me being here, representing again Albania. So we are two, and we are colleagues, and I'm now, let's say, saying something more about what Adea just already said, about the figures and data, but now seeing from a different perspective, because I work in the Academia of Judges and Prosecutors, and it's very nice to see how the progress is made when it comes to representation of the women in the justice system, and those figures are quite right. So the resistance of the women in the anti-corruption policy, it's a figure that shows, yes, the paradigm is right. But on the other hand, what we see that all our policies nowadays are guided towards increased number of women in the judiciary and in the justice institution. For example, Adea just mentioned that we have a vice, let's say, a deputy prime minister being a woman, but we also have a constitutional court chairwoman. And we also have, out of 9 judges in the constitutional court, 4 of them are women, so almost half. Again, in the prosecution council, we just have women leading the prosecution council. So we see that they are well representative in the governing body of the justice system. And another interesting figure that I want to share with you, that I was, before coming here and preparing for this speech or for this intervention, I see that in our school that we train judges and prosecutors. It was a very interesting figure when I found that in the last 3 years, out of 122 candidates to become judges and prosecutors in Albania, I think that 65 are women. So let's say most of them are women. And this is a trend that is going up and up. So we notice many achievements in terms of representation. But as I mentioned in my, and Hilarie mentioned in my introduction, being part on projects and initiatives that monitor and observe the situation of the grounds, not always the representation of the women are reflected in the reality. What do I want to say? What I want to say is that sometimes we don't see that we encourage each other and we do not protect the women that are on the other side, the women that are before the justice, not the women that are within the justice. Because those women face difficulties. They lack access to justice. And here I'm coming with some, let's say, some other figures, which shows that you have a justice system that, of course, represents the highest standards that we all want to achieve by being independent, impartial, and efficient. But is this justice a reality for the ladies, for the young ladies, those who are subject of violence, those who suffer from many, many difficulties, access to education, access to the basic needs? And we see that the situation sometimes is not always promising. And being in different, let's say, regional setting from Western Balkans, where we come from, or even in European settings, we all hear about many, many problems about domestic violence. We hear about women not reporting their own stories. Out of 3 women, only 1 of them report the story to the police. So do women trust the justice system? And I want this to be not like 2 parallel. I want women to be part of the justice system, but I also want the women to protect the women when they are the victims of the reality. And for that, we need to do more. Well, policies, it's a lot, but also education and training is something that we need to do. And we try to let's say, go beyond our stereotypes. Sometimes we have stereotypes ourselves. We think that, okay, we are different, and why should I tell my story? Or he is my husband, and he is the father of my kids, and I better stay like this, be beaten and be isolated. But no, we have to break those chains and we have to move on. And this is something that needs to be started from the early education and to go on into the upper levels. So this is something that we want to address, and is something that we are working hard even in our region. Because sometimes, as we say, we don't take democracy for granted, because we always have to fight for it. But also the civilization is something that we don't take for granted. So being in a civilized modern country does not always mean that everybody is equal and everybody has equal access to justice. So in addition to, let's say, innovation and lights and flourish, we also need to educate people to show their rights and to show them they have to feel protected by the state and by the law. So this is what I wanted to share with you.
So in just a moment, I'm going to open it up to the audience for questions of our panelists. But let me just ask a couple of quick questions. To our Albanian representatives, I referenced at the beginning what the World Bank tells us about the impact of higher numbers of women in legislatures as prosecutors, et cetera, and the impact it has on the rule of law. And obviously you have very impressive numbers, and I wonder whether or not you have observed any difference in the impact the presence of women has made as far as the focus on things from pay gap to discrimination to issues of reproductive rights, et cetera.
Well, it's very important to make such correlations, not only in our public discourse, but also through numbers and quantitative data. We have specific instruments that the Ministry of Social Protection, who is in charge for gender equality in Albania, that takes care not only of the impact that this participation has as for women as roles in policymaking, but what is their specific role qualitatively in the sense of how do they influence decision-making that affect women positively or they have an adverse impact on women, on specific communities. It is very important to see that it has been quite key in the last years, especially in the last decades, the fact that women have been leading key institutions and key ministries, starting from Ministry of Defense. We had a woman who was in charge of the Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Infrastructure, Energy, all those ministries where the kind of message that is being sent is that women are not just part of the decision-making, but they are there to steer policies in these specific areas. I will just give an example of the very recent process that we did. We are in the process of making sure that Albania joins the European Union in a couple of years. And we had a team of 1,700 public officials involved in this. And I will tell you that more than 56% of these officials are women. There is a public perception now that women are hardworking, are those who stand for those changes to come true. And we do believe that when it comes to this kind of change, we see how women's roles have been also reinforced in positions to bring forward gender equality. We have a woman who is in charge of the gender policies on gender pay gap, on gender, on the implementation of what we call the Istanbul Convention of the Protection of Women against violence. And we are very ardent protection of such values in all international fora, especially when we were for 2 years as member of the what we call the non-permanent member of the Security Council. And women, peace and security was one of the policies that we brought forward, also because our Minister of Foreign Affairs was a woman and wanted to shape this kind of global politics in such a way that Albania, although a small country, can have a modest contribution in this. So I think that it's very important what we do as women representatives within the country, but also outside the country. We have many European states who take very much pride of their women leadership in political positions, and I think this is the kind of a mindset that we have to very much spread out and make sure that this is also something that I have to say last but not least, this does not come without a cost for women. This also comes with the fact that women sometimes have to, apart from their daily chores and everything, they also have to be leaders. So this is also what has to be taken into account. But last but not least, since we also have many men in the room, I think that without the very brave commitment of men who support women in this process, this could not be achieved. And I think, especially in patriarchal societies, this is even more important to have men leaders who support women and trust on women to bring forward this kind of positions. So I think it's a very complex scene. with many different kinds of variables playing out. But at the very core of it is that I think the fact that women continue to grow in their roles as change makers, as policy makers, is because they do a good job at the very end of the day. So it's not that anybody will just recognize them for nothing or just for being women, just because they do a good job. That's all.
Thank you. Also, just to say, even in the prosecution level, we have a lot of women that are prosecuted in our country, but the data say that only 50% are in the, let's say, higher ranks, so are leading the prosecution office. And we see that, well, not necessarily a gap, but something that should be addressed in order to reflect all these women, let's say, friendly policies when it comes to women being the victims in the society. Because, as I said, it's a lot of stereotypes and a lot of prejudice, and we want that to be somehow streamlined by the women being in the leading position in those institutions. So this is something that we are, let's say, working out and trying to address in this current discussion in Albania.
Thank you. Judge, obviously Nigeria does not have the kind of numbers of women's representation that you just heard is reflected in Albania.
Not at all.
And I wonder whether or not you could describe for us what you perceive needs to occur to try and improve the numbers of women in active participation in government in your country.
Well, the judiciary is doing very well. Not because I come from there, but the facts on the ground. For the legislative arm of government, you'll find in most cases, no women representation at all. Even in the National Assembly, we have out of 100, and I'm not too sure of the number now, but just maybe about 5 women or 5 to 6. And only recently, a female senator was suspended. And in fact, I thought I would speak on that because it caused a lot of problems. I mean, she was fighting for her rights, and without fair hearing, giving her any hearing, she was suspended from the House. You can, we consider that really very alarming, and that's just the trend, because women do not have the means to match the men in seeking political offices. A lot of money is utilized for that purpose. And there are talks of men holding meetings deliberately late in the night, and women will not be in such meetings because they have to be at home. So the men make sure that they are out because of the time they fix their meetings. So a lot of issues, education, women not only in some parts of the country, you find this practice where the women are kept in puda, and they are not to, in fact, not to be heard and not to be seen, where they cover their faces when they go out. So you don't expect such women to be elected into offices or to seek any offices. By their traditional situation, they can't venture into such political aspirations. So the solution is in getting the girl child educated, which we are talking about a lot now in Nigeria. So with that, with improved education, I think we may succeed later, but that will take a really long time to come.
Thank you, Judge. Trish, you've remarked about the phenomenal progress that has been made in the United States among women lawyers. But what we know is that in the last 10 years, the speed of that enhancement has really slowed. And I wonder if you might describe some of both the structural impediments as well as the concept of implicit bias and how that also plays a role in really slowing down the advancement of women at the upper echelon of law firms, politics, etc.
So you need to understand this is the professor asking the kid student to talk about her topic. So she will correct me because she is the expert on all of this. If any of you have not taken an implicit bias test, I encourage you to do it in the quiet of your own office or your own home. Harvard has a whole host of them on their website, and it allows each of us to understand the things that are inside of us, deep inside of us, that we are not even fully aware are there. And implicit bias in the United States continues to be a significant challenge that keeps women from accomplishing to their full potential, not just in the law, but in all sorts of other areas as well. On the other hand, women who, I'm not sure whether it's women who get legal training or whether it's women who are interested in the law in the first place, but women lawyers are making an enormous difference. It is no accident that the first woman vice president of the United States was a woman lawyer. It is no accident that the first two women nominated by one of our national parties to run for president, both of them were women lawyers, right? So there is a specialness, I think, about women. Which comes first, I do not know, right? Does law attract women who are more high-minded, or does the law training turn us into people of greater ambition? I don't know which, but women lawyers continue to make a significant difference. The barriers, however, continue to exist, and the biggest one, I mean, 12% of managing partners in the United States are women. Come on, that's a tiny number. It may be a high number compared to other countries that are represented in this room, but it's a tiny number. And that is because the men who run commerce, the men who hire lawyers, the men who run law firms continue to fail to promote women and sustain women and raise up women in leadership positions. All we can do is to keep trying, right? It's better now than it used to be. And every time I get discouraged, and every time I see something and I think, man, it's still only such a small number, I think, yeah, but when I started, there weren't any of them. So the fact that we have some is what sustains me.
Thank you. Carmen, so the EU has been very proactive in attempting to address issues of gender equality, everything from quotas to other regulatory requirements. And I wonder if you might focus a light on some of those things to tell us what you think has been most effective.
Efectivamente, en la Unión Europea es muy activa en la política para, digamos, poner en valor a la mujer. Como saben, aunque los Estados somos en algunas cuestiones independientes, en los temas jurídicos, las normas que se llaman directrices que emanan de la Unión Europea son de obligado cumplimiento en todos los territorios y en todos los países. Tenemos el sistema de cuotas, como decía, lo que pasa que es un poco más elevado. En España es el 40%, de tal forma que, porque tenemos una amplia presencia las mujeres en todos los ámbitos y desde luego en el jurídico, tanto desde el punto de vista del poder judicial como en el político, y también los abogados y los notarios, ya hay una gran mayoría, o sea, hay más mujeres que hombres. Y pasa lo mismo que antes comentaban de Estados Unidos, y es que en cambio eso se ve en lo que son los abogados, los jueces, los fiscales, notarios, etcétera, pero en los órganos de gobierno es donde aún no se llega. Entonces ahora hay la obligación de la cuota del 40% mínimo, y no solamente respecto de estas instituciones, sino también incluso en las sociedades cotizadas. En las sociedades cotizadas, en los consejos de administración, también hay una cuota elevada. Ha sido muy efectivo, y por supuesto que lo es. Y estoy de acuerdo en lo que dicen sobre que siempre es importante y que no es, digamos, no pasa inadvertido el que en Estados Unidos la primera vicepresidenta mujer haya sido un abogado y demás. Todos en España y en general en Europa, para acceder ya sea al puesto de fiscal, juez, notario, etcétera, antes somos abogados, o sea, hemos tenido que estudiar derecho. Y no solamente ahora, sino que también en la historia el papel de mujeres juristas ha sido fundamental para contribuir al Estado de Derecho. Yo resaltaría algunas que son significativamente a nivel mundial hitos importantes. Por ejemplo, nosotros en España conseguimos, gracias a una abogada, Clara Campoamor, el voto en la Constitución de 1931, el derecho al voto, que eso es pues muy avanzado. En general, la ONU lo estableció en 1948, o sea que fueron muchos años antes. Luego también Victoria Kent, también a inicios de los años del siglo XX, no fue la primera abogada en España ni en el mundo, pero sí fue la primera abogada en el mundo que participó en un tribunal militar, que estaba, pues lógicamente, muy vedado a las mujeres, cuando ni siquiera podían formar parte de las Fuerzas Armadas. Y quiero resaltar también otra más reciente, de la importancia de que consigamos acceder no solamente a los estudios, sino a los puestos directivos, digamos, de las organizaciones. Una más reciente que, en cambio, no ha sido muy mencionada, y es María Telo. María Telo, por desgracia, voy a contar primero la historia. En España estuvimos con los derechos de las mujeres muy reconocidos y avanzados, pero a partir del año 40 se volvieron a limitar, y sin embargo, antes de morir Franco, ya lógicamente las mujeres mucho antes ya también volvieron otra vez a empezar a acceder a puestos importantes, ya sea de jueces, fiscales, etcétera, pero hasta el año 75 teníamos una ley que era la del consentimiento marital, que es muy parecida a lo que tienen los países con inspiración musulmana en sus legislaciones. Es decir, necesitábamos la autorización del marido o del señor responsable para poder hacer cualquier cosa, sacar el carnet de conducir, hacer estudios o lo que fuera. Y esta señora abogada, María Telo, es quien consigue, antes de fallecer Franco, que sea revocado esa norma. Y por lo tanto quedó ya, lógicamente en la práctica ya muchas veces no se cumplía, pero aún estaba escrita en la ley, y entonces eliminó esta obligación de obediencia al marido y de necesidad de consentimiento. Ahora es muy importante y se está notando mucho la presencia de mujeres en los ámbitos jurídicos, tanto judiciales como de abogados sin más, o notarios o registradores, que son también figuras jurídicas de relevancia en España y en la Unión Europea. Y ha llevado a una legislación mucho más, no solo igualitaria en cuanto a las mujeres, sino respecto también de otras diversidades, buscando muchísimo más la igualdad en el trato, e incluso creando legislación que es un poco favorable al más desfavorecido, o sea, no igual para todos, sino intentando proteger al débil. De hecho, tenemos pues ya desde hace tiempo leyes de protección de consumidores frente a grandes corporaciones que no son equitativas en el trato, al revés, lo que intentan es la balanza ponerla a favor del más débil, y muchas otras que se pueden mencionar. Y creo que las mujeres tenemos un papel importante que se está desarrollando y que vamos a desarrollar. Hay también gente con que pone controversia o quiere crear controversia en cuanto a las cuotas, pero creo que como primer inicio para que podamos llegar a esos puestos es fundamental y necesario. Lógicamente todas queremos llegar por nuestros méritos, no por lo que decimos las cuotas, pero muchas veces ellos vemos que tienen una dinámica de que, como son varones, pues llaman a sus amigos o a conocidos, y pocas veces piensan que hay mujeres igual de válidas o incluso mejores, porque bueno, pues son círculos de relaciones que se perpetúan y que es difícil romper. Entonces sí que creo que de momento es necesario. Nosotros, en concreto en mi campo, que es el notariado, pues por primera vez este noviembre, por primera vez en la historia, una presidenta del Consejo General del Notariado. Ha costado, pero ha llegado. Y bueno, y vamos avanzando, pero aún despacio. Gracias.
Thank you, Carmen. In our remaining few minutes, do we have time for a question or two? If there are any in the audience, yes.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Yulibelis Van del Pool, soy docente universitaria, abogada dominicana, directora legal de la firma La Estratega Servicios de Consultoría, junto a la doctora Yubelka y nuestra notaria, la doctora Marilis Durán. También somos miembros de la Federación de Mujeres Empresarias Dominico Internacional. Les felicito por la ponencia y también por sus perfiles, su trayectoria como mujeres que nos hacen sentir orgullosas, y he escrito algo sobre lo que nos queda de aquí para formular mi pregunta. Nos ha quedado la convicción de que avanzar hacia un Estado de Derecho más sólido e inclusivo requiere no solo de la voluntad política, sino también de un rediseño institucional que incorpora el liderazgo femenino como una condición estructural del desarrollo democrático. Y considerando los distintos contextos nacionales que representan ustedes, desde África, Europa del Este y América del Norte, quisiera presentar esta pregunta para que alguna me la pueda contestar. ¿Cuáles estiman que son las reformas más urgentes, tanto normativas como institucionales, para garantizar una participación de la mujer en la que no se reduzca a la dimensión simbólica, sino que también constituya un verdadero pilar de la defensa del Estado de Derecho, especialmente en un momento en el que estamos viendo los fenómenos de regresión democrática, la judicialización de la política y sobre todo el debilitamiento de los órganos de control del Estado?
And I'm being told we need to wrap up, so if anyone would like to give a quick response.
Bueno, yo creo que es fundamental. Bueno, lógicamente cada uno vamos a hablar, me imagino, desde la perspectiva de nuestra realidad en nuestro país o en Europa. Además de lo de las cuotas, que yo creo que es necesario para iniciarlo, en España en concreto, para que sea más efectiva la igualdad, estamos ahora enfocando mucho las medidas en hacer compatible la vida personal con la vida profesional. Hay un hecho biológico, que es que nosotras somos las que tenemos los niños, y eso nos lleva a tener pues unas preocupaciones quizá no tan centradas solo en el trabajo como muchas veces son capaces de hacer los hombres, y de poner por detrás la familia como somos nosotros. Entonces, las políticas y legislación necesaria para ayudarnos en esas etapas y para que sea posible compaginarlo, creo que es fundamental. Y además no solo, como he dicho ya en otras ocasiones, sobre el papel, sino que sea realmente efectiva. Otra cuestión que antes también he dado una pincelada, que era sobre la posibilidad de que las mujeres dejen de sufrir la violencia en todos sus ámbitos, es imprescindible. También reformas, legislación y aplicación y justicia que lo permitan y que eviten esa dependencia económica, esos malos tratos físicos o cualquier otra forma, porque nos perdemos muchísimo talento femenino, y no solamente las cuestiones de violencia afectan como normalmente se crea gente con menos formación, ¿no? Hay en todos los ámbitos y hay de todas las formas, y es imposible que uno se desarrolle con esa carga. Luego, la educación, como también he señalado antes, en la educación es imprescindible. Como he dicho, en Europa estamos viendo, y sobre todo en España, que es mi país, como chicos de 15, 14 años y demás, el tema de las relaciones con el otro sexo e incluso el papel que cada uno debemos desempeñar en el futuro, pues está sufriendo un retroceso que no se puede permitir. La educación es fundamental. Yo creo que son esos tres los que, aparte de las cuotas o del derecho a la educación que todos tenemos, en los que debemos fijarnos para que sea efectivo.
Gracias, Carmen. I think we are being told we need to move on because we don't want you to be late to the next session. So please join me in thanking our panelists for their contributions today. Thank you so much.